well, pleasure to be here. So since the film is showing tonight, I'll ask questions that don't spoil anything for you, the audience. But I do want to start by asking a question about the film. So we were just talking about Monte Hellman, who directed the film, and this being his first feature in over 20 years. So you see guys like Monte and Terrence Malick who go long time between features. What's the rationale behind that?
I think the problem is that the definition of what an American film should be probably got sat on fairly badly back in the late 60s. There was a very exciting, explosive moment after Easy Rider, and the rules sort of got thrown out and people started making all kinds of movies. But then the business and critics like Pauline Kael started kind of roping things back in and drawing lines and saying, well, you can't go that crazy, you can't go that far out. And I think guys like Terry and Monte are kind of like soul brothers. They're not the kind of film artists that you can tell how far to go. And they both explore cinema, and they're both visionaries, each in their own way. And if you're running around trying to raise money for visionary cinema, you better find a rich European friend or subsidy or something. It's just not easy. So the simple answer is, if you don't have big hits on your resume, finding money to make movies that are individualistic and personal is a hard road.
So again, without giving too much away for tonight's screening, one of the characters talks about casting. Tell us how you went about casting this movie.
This movie is really a down-home, family affair. We made this movie as a completely personal film, completely with private money. One of my friends in the business, a really smart producer named Frederick Golshan, read the script early on and said, this is a brilliant movie, brilliant script, but it's never going to be financed by anybody in Hollywood. You're going to only make this movie with money from outside the town. And it turned out to be right. We made it with private money. One of the people instrumental, there's a wonderful history to her. June Nelson was the secretary to Lenny Bruce in the last days of his life, as well as a secretary for a big record executive. So casting the movie was like everything else. We just did it ourselves. We cast Cliff DeYoung because 30 years ago we wanted Cliff in a movie that we were on our way to making and never made. And so when we were coming to think about this role of Taschen, I said to Monte, do you still like Cliff DeYoung as much as you did 30 years ago? And he said, yeah, the guy's brilliant. So Cliff DeYoung. Shannon I spotted in a restaurant on La Brea in Hollywood, and I just saw her across the room, and was with some people having lunch, and I've known Monte so well. I've known him and worked with him for 40 years, and I just thought, wow, she's a Monte Hellman femme fatale. I don't know what that means, but she's a Monte Hellman girl. And so, I told her she should call Monte. They was casting a film, and he saw her and talked to her, and they immediately hit it off. I should say one thing about Shannon in this movie. If you see it someday, or have seen it, if the girl at the center of the story, if the actress playing the girl is not completely off the charts, unbelievable, if she's not enigmatic and fragile and mysterious and playful and childlike and dark and unfathomable, if she can't do all of that all the time, you probably don't have a movie. And Shannon is that and more. So we did, just out of great good luck, find somebody who is just an unbelievably gifted actress and perfect for the movie. Rob Kolar, we had an actor cast to play Steve Gates, the writer, not coincidentally. And we really had trouble with the casting at the very last minute, and we cast a fellow who's a singer in a band, a guy named Rob Kolar, who's just terrific as the writer and gives it a whole different. He's the grandson of Robert Shaw, incidentally, and instead of the writer being kind of whiny and neurotic, he's sort of British and sort of pissed off all the time, and he's kind of big, and so he brings a different dimension to it. I'm trying to think. Waylon Payne, I'd seen Walk the Line, and he played Jerry Lee Lewis and was quite good. and it was quite interesting. And Monte, interestingly enough, cast this movie. Monte never wants to see actors in movies. He wants to see actors in life because he wants them to be as they are in life. So he looked at footage of Waylon just sitting on a sidewalk talking, and he just judges people for acting by how they are in real life and talking. So it's a long answer, but it was a fascinating process, and it was really indicative of the way the whole thing was made.
So one of the things when you watch the movie tonight that you'll notice is how beautiful the cinematography is.
Yes.
And for a movie under budget, $5 million, it looks like a studio quality film. Talk to us a little bit about what camera you use. I think the Canon 5D.
Yeah.
And how that process came.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm most proud about on this movie is its little footnote in history. The New York Times said that this movie will prove as significant to the history of independent cinema as Avatar to blockbusters. So it is kind of fun to be here, and having seen all that stuff you just saw and all those things blowing up and all those effects, we don't have any of that. We're the technological breakthrough because we shot an entire feature film with a still camera, and no one had ever done it before. The Canon Mark II 5D is a camera that has a full sensor. It is a still camera. It's about as big as this microphone. And no one had ever thought to shoot a feature film, but this director, Monte Hellman, who is around 80 years old, became the breakthrough digital filmmaker of the year by just having this adventurous spirit and saying, we're going to make a film in a way nobody ever has. His DP, who is a brilliant Spanish DP, Josep Savit, was just as game for this as Monte. He had just shot a commercial in Barcelona where they used what's called the Red camera, which is an expensive digital camera, maybe $100,000. The Canon is about $3,000, $3,000. He'd shot this commercial and used the Canon and the expensive camera side by side, looked at the footage, and thought there must be some mistake because the Canon camera looked better than the expensive Red camera footage. So you have these two guys who'd made movies together before. Josep shot Better Watch Out for Monte, and he shot Iguana, which I also co-wrote. And so these two guys were master artists, masters of cinematography. Monte's made movies with Giuseppe Rotuno and Nestor Almendros. He's at the high end of working with great, magnificent cinematographers. That's why using this little camera and this new technology and the still camera looks so damn good, because they're brilliant. To take on making a movie in a technology nobody's ever made is because they have adventurous spirits. I just was along for the ride on that part.
Well, then, so tell us a little bit about the process of writing the script. It's essentially a movie within a movie, and there's some technical language, there's some non-technical language, but tell us what inspired you to write this.
Somebody described it as a movie about a movie about a movie about a true story that isn't true. And that is actually what it is. It is in some ways very simple, but we did something that people haven't done before. We told the story of a filmmaker who was trying to tell a true crime story, or so he thought. And then bad things happened, and he wound up making a movie about what he tried to make. And so when you're watching the movie, and some films have been like that. I mean, Mulholland Drive was a little bit like that, and The Player, and The Stuntman, and Day for Night. But you always know where you are in those movies. One of the things that's made this a very difficult film commercially and for a lot of audiences, which I'll talk about a little bit more, is that we don't tell you anything. You know the movie, how many people have seen Inception? No shit. That's why they have $1 billion and I'm working on parking money. Inception tells you for 2 hours what's going on. We never tell you anything You never, if you watch it 4 times, you will have it. You will get it. And it isn't because it's that complex. It's simply that the movie and the movie and the movie and what's going on is never articulated. We don't shoot with a different style. We don't tell you, aha, now this is the movie and this is real life, or this is real life and this is... You just, you're on your own. One fascinating thing about audience reaction that Monte and I have been talking about, movie bloggers, people who are real film fans enough to create their own blogs and review films. In America and around the world, about 85% of them that have reviewed the film have just said, my God, this is a masterpiece, it's brilliant, I've watched it 3 times, I love it, just, fantastic. The people who have rated the movie on Netflix and on, what's the other one, is it Amazon.com? I think it's Amazon.com and Netflix. The people who have rated the movie there, 95% of them say, this is the worst film I've ever seen in my life. These people should be killed. I hated this. Don't watch it. It is the road to nowhere. It goes absolutely nowhere. It's the slowest movie I've ever seen in my life. They hate it. They just hate the movie. But, the movie lovers seem to love it. So there's a hell of a dichotomy there. It's kind of interesting.
So talking more generally about independent film, and we talked about the Canon 5D being cheap. Not everyone's Monte Hellman, but more and more people can make independent films. Who, if anyone, is what's going to be the future of this? How are people going to access films like yours?
The world of independent cinema has never been more dismal. It's a tough business because to get your film in theaters requires an awful lot of money and marketing cost. And, unless you're willing to spend, well, let's start with Avatar. The marketing budget on Avatar was probably around $150 million. Not the production cost, the cost of selling the movie to you. The cost of selling you on the idea of going to see Pirates of the Caribbean cost about $150 million. Now, a small movie in Hollywood probably costs $70 million to market. And an independent film probably costs 10 to 20. So it really doesn't matter if you make the film for 50 cents. You have to market it and get people in the theaters, and then you have to recoup your marketing budget. So it's a really crappy time for film. Home entertainment is going away completely. Like, you can watch it on a clock. It's just like cycling through. It'll be gone completely in a few years. So that home entertainment money that helped people recoup on their films is going away. Piracy is crazy. I have a 15-year-old daughter who should not have done this, but she showed me Rise of the Planet of the Apes on her computer. It's not available on home entertainment, folks. I scolded her about that because I feel very strongly about piracy. I don't think piracy is the end of the studio pictures, but it's certainly the end of the independent pictures. And so anybody who buys or looks at a movie pirated is really stabbing in the heart all the independent filmmakers and making it better for all of the big studio movies. By the way, and I'm digressing, someone explained to me that there is a movie studio that loves piracy because the more people who see their movies, essentially it builds an awareness for them to sell their beach towels and toys and lunchboxes. I won't tell you who that is, but it makes a lot of sense. The movie is just it's a commercial for the toys. We don't have any action figures available yet from Road to Nowhere, although our Japanese distributor is selling apparel, which I'm very excited about. I'll probably buy it all up myself,
So since we're in Palo Alto, heart of the Silicon Valley, let's talk about what the Valley can do differently. Either technology, there's a lot of money up here to help independent film. We've seen a few folks like Jeff Skoll from eBay, Participant Productions, do some pretty cool things with independent film.
Well, you're kind of talking to the wrong guy because I have such specific ideas about what guys like Jeff Skoll should be financing my films to be. No, but I think that the other problem with American independent film is that it's become formulaic. There's a studio formula and there's an indie formula. And then there's an area where we could actually make interesting films. And I feel bad for filmmakers. It's kind of like, you know, kids who play music, who use drum machines and don't play their instruments. You know, I go, but the fun is having a band and playing the music, you know. To me, the fun of making a movie is writing a script that blows people's minds and scares people and freaks them out and makes them think and challenges the way they look at life. And independent film, for me, is largely very politically correct and very tepid and very predictable and very safe because of what I was talking about before. Everybody's trying to recoup, even Jeff Skoll. And I wish they would apportion some of that money for really, truly, you know, ambitious and creative, responsible filmmakers. But that part of the film world doesn't seem to exist here too much.
So in LA, how is Silicon Valley perceived to the average LA filmmaker, or to the studio exec, or to generally people in the entertainment industry?
Boy, that's actually a hell of a good question, and I can say that because I'm a journalist. You know, I think it's perceived by different people in different ways. I mean, I think there's a lot of cliches around it, and probably misinformation. I think there's probably just tremendous respect, you know, because anybody who does something really well and sort of exemplifies success and innovation and expertise. I mean, if you don't respect it, you're an idiot, you know. I mean, so I think on a basic level, there's a lot of respect. I think that there's a lot of interest in the new platforms, and I don't know that that has anything to do with Silicon Valley in a way, but it does. So I think the technology of filmmaking and distribution of entertainment has never been more front and center for everybody. There was sort of a stability for a while. There was sort of like, you know, movies, and then there was TV, and then there was home video, and things sort of happened where you could kind of get your act together. You had 15 or 20 years to get it together before the next thing came. Now it seems like there's a new format every week, you know, there's a new thing. And we know that everything is going to be delivered digitally. We know we will have the thing I'm waiting for, which is the entertainment system where everything that's ever been done is available for me to watch and listen to, you know, and it's all there, and it's going to be on a very nice screen and very cool. So I think Hollywood, you know, if there's any money here to make movies, Hollywood will find a way to at least try to shake it out of your pockets. So beware, you know, if they're always on the hunt for money. And other than that, I don't know. I mean, I think that the creative interface is probably more in the area of the James Cameron type films and the amazing technology of 3D and the future of filmmaking and the actual crazy stuff that guys like Cameron do.
So I'll ask a very blunt question, which is, you see a lot of things going on with web series and things like that up here. Do they matter to the LA crowd at all?
You know, again, you may be talking to the wrong guy. I mean, I think the problem with web material is when you try to get into the area of monetization of it, you probably hit a pretty dead end, at least so far. It's probably more exciting as an incubator of talent. I mean, we do a lot of stuff at Variety, 10 actors to watch, 10 screenwriters to watch, 10 comics to watch. It's really fascinating how many people coming out of stand-up comedy, how many young actors, how many kind of YouTube phenomenons there are. So I think that as a talent incubator for people writing webisodes and acting in them and getting their chops together, you know, something that people don't think about that much, a guy like John Ford, if you look back on how many John Ford movies were made before anybody really started talking about John Ford, he was able to screw up a lot, you know, because he made dozens and dozens and dozens of things that nobody remembers or saw, you know, so much. And then it became sort of like, you know, you make your first movie and everybody's watching, and then if you fall on your face on your second, you're out of the business. I think the webisodes maybe is a way that people can really experiment and develop their theories about acting and working and writing, and just have such a low cost base that they can be the equivalent of going to what used to be like the Roger Corman School of Indie Filmmaking, where Monte Hellman came out of. They were, cranking movies like Little Shop of Horrors. They were shooting them overnight. I think the internet is kind of like that.
So going back to the movie, and some of the audience here is going to watch the movie tonight. When you made the movie, if to the extent that you want to spoil this, what do you want people to take away when they walk away from this film?
Well, I think the hard thing about this movie, and one of the reasons, in fairness to the people who don't like it, I think it's hard to access the feelings the first time around. I think your head is kind of spinning a bit, trying to keep up. It's not an audience-friendly movie in the sense that the narrative stops and starts. Monte has a very unorthodox pacing. He has his own pacing. There is a logic to it, and it is there, but it's the way he works with actors, it's fantastic. I mean, Monte really does believe that everybody else is wrong, and I've probably been working with him so long, he's got me talked into it. But one guy that I thought would never, ever, I never imagined him saying this because he was a studio guy, he saw the movie and said afterwards he started watching some other movies and he couldn't watch them because everything seemed so fake. All the acting seemed fake. A lot of people talk about the acting in this movie seeming very flat and unprofessional. And so it's a very unorthodox acting style and editing style. But I think once you get past the complexity, or what seems to be the complexity of the story, and the unorthodox approach to filmmaking that Monte Hellman has, what you discover is that Monte has a very emotional center to this tale that is something we created together. There are a lot of feelings in the film, and I think that the people who like it, after they've seen it 2 or 3 times, what they seem to be coming to me and telling me is, I got the feelings after I got past the shock of I don't know where the hell I am, and I watched it again. I realized that there are real feelings between these characters. I like the idea that everybody in the movie is a grown-up with something they really want to achieve. I like the idea that nobody in the movie really is in pursuit of the truth except one guy, and he's got a drinking problem. So I think what I want the audience to find, I would love it if people who love film noir like the movie, because it's a poem and a tribute to film noir. And I would like it if people who look for feelings in movies from very sophisticated characters came away and said, yeah, I got that.
So I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions.
We have a mic back there for anybody who does have a question.
Hello.
And by the way, if we want to talk about Road to Nowhere, I'm happy. And if we want to talk about Hollywood, I've been at Variety almost 20 years and been a journalist in Hollywood longer. And I'm happy to talk about that very funny place because I find it amusing. So I don't know if anybody else does. But
so. I'd love to hear about all that. But first, just generically, I know you've worked on a bunch of movies, and I know that scripts change a lot between the time you set them to paper and the end of it. And I was wondering, in this case, how folded and spindled and mutilated was your idea, and how did you maintain, or were you able to maintain control over your vision?
Well, the question was, how much did Road to Nowhere get folded, spindled, and mutilated in the process of getting made? Almost not at all. I mean, we had a strand of the story that would have helped explain the story a lot. There is a whole sequence and a setting that explains. There's a character named Velma Duran, and there is in the movie a real Velma Duran. In the script, you actually saw the real Velma Duran, and you saw what happened to her. In the movie, there's only a verbal reference to her. Other than that, it's almost not changed at all. Some of the actors did some improvs in some scenes and went deeper into what I wrote, and what they did was deepen it, but they never changed it, if you will. A few lines changed, and the answer your question, which I love about how did you maintain control? The secret of maintaining control over this movie was by not even trying, because I was Monte Hellman's enabler. I did not want to say to him, Monte, she's tying her shoes for what seems like an hour. Why the hell is the girl in the scene tying her shoelaces for so freaking long? I just looked at it and I went, that's great. That's great, you know. Not because I was trying to placate him, but because I understood the internal rhythms, and I understand Monte so well, and I understand that if you really start peering deeply into this movie, you start seeing the line between Monte Hellman and Mitchell Haven disappear, and you start to understand that Mitchell Haven's obsession with Laurel Graham is a little bit of Monte Hellman's obsession with some of the actresses he's been involved with. And it all sorts of blend together. So by writing it and tailoring it to this guy so precisely, and then just giving it to him and praying, you know, it's really funny because I think he's now coming around a little bit in interviews to not saying that the movie was completely transformed in production. He said that a number of times, and his daughter, who was also a producer on the film, we're sort of saying to him, no, it isn't. And the good thing is there is a script in the Academy Library now, so anybody wants the script, I'll send it to you after you see the movie. I may be, you know, completely crazy, but I just don't think he changed it very much at all. But not because I tried to stop him. The other thing is there are a lot of writers who get a producer credit or who produce movies, and they're usually really crap because people have to make concessions to the writer, and they're not the right concessions, and the writer isn't the guy that necessarily you should be making the concessions to. It's a director's medium. So I really intentionally, and Gina is here with me, we worked on the movie together, she knows, I tried to stay out of the filmmaking, you know, like go off and have a coffee and didn't want to see it that much. The other funny thing is, there were some times when I got really angry that I thought some of the lines were really terrible. And I just said, who came up with this? And then I went back to the script and I went, oh, damn, I wrote that. Any other questions? Yes, we have one there.
Given your experience in several facets of the industry, what small piece of advice would you give to somebody who's a first-time screenwriter?
Advice, what is the advice I would give a first-time screenwriter? Because I never wanted to direct films, I naturally think I'm right. And I would not necessarily try to direct films. I would try to produce. The model in TV, and actually kind of the model in film right now, I think is the producer having the real creative authority. I mean, for me, Steven Spielberg is a producer. You know, he's a brilliant producer. But having the control over your material and picking the right director, you know, in other words, write a script, find the money. That's the fastest way to do it. But, you know, the sophistication in that advice is write a script, find the money, have a business plan, figure out who's going to go to your movie, how much money is it going to cost to make it, and how much money do you expect you're going to get back, all that other stuff. But it's basically write and produce and have a very, very, very firm hand on the realities of the business side.
Yeah, hi. I'm Cecilia. I'm actually making an indie documentary about young web entrepreneurs.
You're making a documentary?
Yeah, it's like an indie it's actually about young web entrepreneurs. And we're actually still deciding on our distribution strategy. And I just wanted to ask you, what was your distribution strategy?
So you, to be clear, you've produced a documentary about entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What's it called?
The Startup Kids.
What's it called? That's what I thought. Yeah, Startup. The Startup Kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I saw it in the program, and we were both very curious. We want to see it. I mean, the only advice, I don't think anybody would tell you anything different, is that you've got to go to the usual suspects if you want distribution. There are 4, 8, 10, 12 companies that you start with, and after them you're probably going down to a place where it's going to get tougher and tougher to get anything resembling money. Depends on how much money you spent on the documentary and how much you expect to get back. We played in competition in Venice. Monte won a special lion there. He's the director of Two-Lane Blacktop and movies with Jack Nicholson like Shooting and Riding the Whirlwind. But none of that meant anything because we did not have stars in our film, and it is very determinedly an art film. So we did not create a bidding war. We created the opposite of a bidding war. We were one of those films where who's going to take a chance on this? And the company that did is a very experienced and very ballsy company called Monterey Media. We had a very good international sales company called E1 out of Canada. You want to find the equivalent of what we found. You want to find adventurous, brave, smart, creative people who are willing to talk to filmmakers who don't have Brad Pitt in their movie. You know, so the names of them are, you know, there are a few of them out there, and but you know, also start big. You know, start with the people who like IFC. You know, IFC does a great job with documentaries. Start at the top and see if you get something going. Is this the premiere of the film here, or is it?
No, it's not completely done. We're premiering in the end of the year, but so we're like still just deciding on whether going the traditional way through festivals or just go like through online and used all the promotion there, because it's a documentary about young web entrepreneurs. So like our target market is mostly online, but so we're like still deciding on.
There may be very specialized documentary firms or distributors that specialize in video on demand, and you know, this is where you need to be very, very savvy and do a lot of research and see who all the players are and make a lot of phone calls.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit to the digital distribution side of it. The deals typically are not very good, and it's tough to go directly to a Netflix or a Hulu. There are companies that distribute to those places, and you're going to have to work through them. But you know, you're in the Silicon Valley. A lot of people I know have, you know, befriended influencers here and got them to spread the word about films, and that's worked out quite well for them.
Exactly. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I have a question about Hollywood. Unless someone
you have a question?
No, sorry.
Okay. You all know what you really want to ask me is who Ashton Kutcher was sleeping with last weekend, and I know, but I can't tell you.
I was just wondering whether your 20 plus years of experience at Variety has influenced at all topics of interest in your screenwriting.
You know, God damn it did. Because movies about movies are like one of those things I would advise you to not do, because they're like on a list in all the offices of all the executives in all the companies. In film noir, there's a line in the movie where the writer says, "This could be the film noir of our dreams," and the producer says, "Don't ever use that word again." Film noir is like verboten, and movies about movies are verboten. This whole list. And I should point out that the people who run independent cinema today are the people who destroyed independent cinema about 2-3 years ago over a period of 4 or 5 years. They made about $1 billion. They spent about $1 billion a year in production money on about 70 features. All of them made money by getting producer fees and acting fees and every kind of fee you could imagine, legal fees. They all made money on the process of making these films, and they blew about $1 billion a year. And they made a whole bunch of independent movies that were crap and nobody wanted to see. Now, out of desperation, all of us who are independent filmmakers are going to these schmucks saying we have movies to make, and they're telling us what works. They don't know what works. I mean, one major company was in the news this week, just lost $50 million on 3 movies. They wrote off $50 million. Hey, you know, I think I'm doing pretty good, you know, with my little film, but in their world, this is not smart, but they're smart. So Knowing all of that influenced writing this movie, and I actually wrote another movie in the meantime about the worst weekend in the life of director Sam Peckinpah from the 1970s. It's sort of like Raymaland and Lost Weekend as seen through Hunter Thompson's eyes and directed by Federico Fellini. Another box office hit, I'm sure. Very tough movie to set up. I promise God I will never write another movie about show business. But you were very perceptive. Working at Variety for 20 years, I must have gotten something going on in my head that I had to get out, because I never wanted to write a movie about Hollywood. It just happened.
So I'm told we have time for one more question. I'm going to go ahead and steal it and ask you this. So as a Hollywood insider, I'm curious,
Did I get as much time as Walter Murch or not?
You'll have to ask Alf that. I'm going to defer to Alf on that one. So who are, amongst Hollywood insiders are the most respected directors, actors, and screenwriters? And conversely, who are the idiots who get a very good reputation? To the extent that you can answer that.
Yeah, well, I don't think there really are any idiots. I think that the idiots are in charge. So, that's the problem. The idiots are in charge in terms of the critics and in terms of the producers and in terms of the studio execs. But that's my own personal aesthetic, My belief is, and I believed this 30 years ago before I ever worked at Variety or before I made Road to Nowhere, there should be an area where films stretch the boundaries. There should be an area where people take risk, and this kind of creative entrepreneurial spirit should be nourished and nurtured and celebrated. It is like being a leper, if you dare to, you're a bohemian, where at one time, like in the 70s, that's how you made your bones, that's how you were respected. You made a movie like Dr. Strangelove or 2001, Clockwork Orange, they're all Kubrick films, Blow Up, Passenger, whatever. Name those movies, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. When people saw you in the restaurant, they kind of went, hey, you really effed with their heads. That's cool. Nobody's effing with anybody's heads right now. And it makes me sad that that's become kind of off the radar. The business has become so corporatized, and it's so much run by accountants, and it's so about money and about stuff that has nothing to do with adventurous cinema that kind of breaks my heart a little bit. That there, and I mean there really should just be this much space. I'm not talking about that should be like the dominant strain. There should be a tiny space. There is no space. I think the smart people in the business are just all the people who are making money. As soon as you go over to someone's house and they have a swimming pool and a Mercedes, you go, this schmuck must be smart. What's he doing? You know what I mean? It's really all about money, and the people making money are smart, and the ones who aren't are idiots.
So it's not like, a Fincher or an Aronofsky just really stand out to you and, wow, they're really respected and
well, if you ask me who the smart people are, it's Ermanno Olmi and Nick Rogue, but then, I'm a focus group of one. I think in Hollywood, the critics have become like a consensus gang. They're all nodding at each other, going, "It's Fincher this year. It's Fincher this year." I think it's all bullshit. So I'll leave on that note.
All right. Well, colorful conversation. Good note to end on. Thanks very much.